Hello viewers, here's a mindful man reading Ghost School final chapters. Pretty soon it got dark and they set off. They made sure there was no one around. They walked softly on the frosty ground. No one spoke as they were all so nervous. They could see their shadows on the wall and they looked back to see the school bathed in darkness. It was a relief to them. Little did they know that a small lamp had been turned on behind a velvet curtain. He moved the curtain slightly and with a pair of binoculars he looked into the night. He didn't like what he saw. They trudged on into the woods, ignoring the hooting owls and the running rabbits, as they had far more worrying things to think about. Stepping over branches, they circled the pond which led into the woods. The moon hung frozen in the sky, and James looked up, marveling at its beauty. It was almost as if he was back home, except there were no stars to accompany it. Tom trudged forlornly behind him, dreaming of his duvet and a long night's sleep. They could see the cottage in the distance. It looked eerie in the moonlight. A black cat ran across their path and they jumped in fright. "Damn," said Tom, "what are we doing here?" "Stop whining," said James. "Be cool." The girls smiled and wondered what they had got themselves into. Suddenly they saw a dark shadow move towards the cottage. "What is it?" whispered Lucy, growing frightened. "Oh my God," said Anne, "I think it's a man." "Who could it be?" whispered Lucy. "I'm not keen on finding out," said Anne hotly. They crouched behind a tree and James covered his mouth as his breathing grew fog-like in the air. "Careful," hissed Tom, who was also growing alarmed. The figure moved like a great bear, moving with long strides. It was wearing a long coat and hat, and it took a while for the penny to drop. "Oh my God," Lucy exclaimed, "it's the headmaster." "You're right," said Anne. She could tell by his size and the way he moved that it was him. Looking around nervously, he entered the cottage. "I wonder what he's up to," said Tom. "I'd love to know," said James. "I bet it's not pleasant." They inched closer and heard a rattling of the drawers and the clang of cutlery. 5 minutes passed and they were growing restless and tired. Suddenly the door sprung open and he appeared with a heavy bulging sack hanging over his shoulder and a shotgun under his arm. "Oh Jesus," said Tom, "I hope he's hunting rabbits." "I doubt it," said James. He flung the bag to the ground and reached into his pocket and produced a torch. He flicked the switch and immediately a beam of pure white light illuminated a section of the woods. They stayed very still and quiet. The light moved this way and that until it stopped barely 5 feet from them. Slowly it moved forward, inching its way towards them. James looked down as a circle of light edged closer to his feet. No one moved and no one breathed. Then suddenly, "Ouch! God damn!" he cried out, startling a crow which flew into the sky, scattering leaves onto their heads like confetti. He turned round and limped back to the cottage. "I wonder what he's up to," said Lucy. "I don't know," said James, "but that was a close shave." Then the cottage door opened again as they watched in silence. He came out backwards, dragging a large sack before him. "That looks heavy," James muttered quietly. They heard him grunt and sweat as he wrestled with the sack. "It's definitely the head," said Lucy. "I recognize his voice." "Shh," said Tom, "we all do." They could see his gun on the ground and they didn't want to give him a reason to pick it up. Then they saw something they didn't expect or want to see. A white plimsoll was sticking out of the bottom of the sack. "Oh my God," exclaimed Lucy and Anne together. "I wonder who it could be," said James. "Some poor unfortunate," said Tom, looking angry. "What kind of head is he?" said Anne. "An evil one," Lucy said accurately. They decided to walk back to the school. They had seen enough. But before they could go much further, they saw him drag the sack over the rose bushes, and then he came to a silent stop. Hope you enjoyed this chapter. Please sub me.